Hey everyone, welcome to Pilot to Co-Pilot, a leadership podcast with me, Antonio Neves, and Jason Lindstrom. And today we're diving into a conversation a lot of leaders just don't talk about enough, and that is, what does it mean to lead both at work and at home? Because we give so much to our teams, to clients, to audiences, and sometimes the people we care about most get what's left over. So today we're going to talk about not so much about perfection, but what balance can look like, how that balance can shift in different seasons, what Jason and I have learned along the way, what we've missed, and how we're trying to show up differently today. So Jason, let's get started here. By the way, let me start here. You know what's so funny, man? And I'm curious your thoughts on this. I have found that sometimes, man, that the things that I succeed at, that I'm great at professionally, communication, charisma, energy, being interested in others, sometimes I haven't always been really good at that at home. So I'm curious for you, have you ever found that as well? Like out in the world, Jason is this dynamic figure leading these teams, massive budgets, all that fun stuff. And then we get home and I'm sure our family and our spouses are like, where did that guy go? Have you experienced that?
Absolutely, Antonio. It's funny. I just laugh at it because it's just funny when you get home, because sometimes the family becomes the proverbial punching bag for your frustrations for the day, or you come home and you want to share what went on, or, oh, we've got the regulator up our back for this or whatever. And it's one of those things, you need a spouse that can help absorb all of that. But yeah, you're so true, so right on that. I think it's interesting because you're on stage, but I'm on stage too, right? So as a leader, as a CEO of an organization, I'm on stage. I feel like everybody's looking at me. It's also very lonely at times as a leader, where you're in the office and you long for that social interaction and nobody wants to talk to you because you're the CEO. And I try to make it that I'm a person, I'm on Facebook, I do fun things. I like to hang out. We've talked about Chick-fil-A Wednesday. Today's Wednesday. This all part of life. And I think when you have that, it's great, but you're on stage and you get home and you're off stage, and it's a chance where you're like, I can be grumpy if I want to, because I had a little bit of traffic getting home, or, it's hot and humid outside, or, in Maine here, the snow, like we closed early, we have to drive home in the snow. Right. So I'm not on stage at home. I don't feel like I have to perform. And so sometimes you let your guard down and you become that grump, or that I just want to take a nap person, or, what are we having for dinner? Or, all those kind of things come up, it's just different.
I think that's a really great language you use because, yes, I'm on stages speaking to hundreds, sometimes thousands of people. But I think we forget that leaders, executives, these men and women, they're on stages as well. They're just very different kind of stages. A stage is a meeting on Zoom or Teams. A stage is interacting with your team. A stage is that annual letter that you're putting out. So many different things. And who we are off stage and on stage is so critical. Something I had to make sure I did a few years back with someone, I forgot who taught me this, but I remember I'd come home from these long business trips, being on the road, giving so much energy to so much people, being on stage. And as we mentioned, my family would not get the best of me, just straight up. They would not. So I made it a point, no matter how tired I was after being on the road, I would sometimes, Jason, park 2 blocks away from my home. Like I drive home from the airport and I would park 2 blocks from my home, and I would just sit there in the car and I would breathe. And I would say, hey, man, I know you're exhausted, you're tired, different time zones. And hey, when you walk in that house, bring joy, bring some energy, bring some fun. It's that question of like, what shows up when you show up? And it has to be intentional, but it's challenging as well because it can be exhausted. And I'm curious for you, having the title of a CEO, or if someone's an SVP, VP, you name it, just a lot of responsibilities. I mean, how can you be a family person and a CEO and win at both at the same time? Do you have to implement, in your experience, similar systems?
Yeah, it's about being organized, all the way around. and planning out for things. For example, my wife and I have my calendar at work, my Outlook, where everything at work gets done, but we share a calendar on our iPhones too. So it's like I have to double check evenings at times to say, what is she doing? Where am I going to be? Are we going to have time for each other? I like to release stress. As you know, I mountain bike ride, and, the summers are relatively short, and the spring, and, then it gets cold, too cold to be outside. So then I'm on the Peloton. But I get home, I want to ride. I want to just release any stress that I had that day, be one with myself and my AirPods on my bike, looking back at what the day brought me, what is coming up, and get away for a little bit. Then I get home and I'm like, all the endorphins have kicked in from that nice bike ride. And I'm able to then, chill out, hang out, figure out what's going on. But having that joint calendar and looking at things like, what are we doing Friday night? What do we have Saturday? What do we've got on the schedule? And trying to make time for, my spouse, especially. And then, if we've got plans to go visit my kids, they live in another state, how do we plan for that? And how am I present for the family? And can I disconnect from work? And it's very hard to, when you're leading an organization. In my case, it's 130 people. We've talked about leading through COVID and leading through things. We have grown extremely well. The team here is really devoted to, serving our members and taking care of them. And it's just fantastic. But I feel like I'm on 24/7. Not any expectation of anyone here at the organization, but my own expectation to be there and available. We've had, people get sick or have a heart attack or something like that happens in the evening, and you're kind of on call to, like, answer that call, the phone. What's going on? How can we help? What can the credit union do? Those kind of things. And the larger you grow, the more those types of situations happen. So yeah, it can be challenging, and it's again, like you talked about, the balance factor. You're really trying to have a balance. And um, my my wife, she's got a e-bike now, and she bikes with me, and I do my best to uh, have her catch up to me, or me ride slow enough. It's not my normal pace, but I do those kind of things so I can have time with her. But she likes to walk on the beach in the summertime, and so we've been doing that every now and then. So I miss out on my bike ride one night, but it's one night. When she asked me for another night, shortly after, I'm like, no, I got to ride. But
It
it's
was
just a
funny.
balance.
It
So
was good knowing what you need, right? She needs her things,
yeah,
you need your things. But you said I need to ride, and it's interesting. My wife knows me well enough when she's like, you need to go to the gym, you need to go for a run. I know you're here, you're on the floor with the kids doing this, and I can feel it that you need. I call it get my crazy out, and runs is one of the ways that I get to do that. You mentioned something interesting that's important, all right? The joint calendar and that communication. My wife and I likewise have a joint calendar. I have my separate calendar. She knows I'm going to be out of town. I have all the kids stuff available to me, and we try to spend time. We don't try to on a weekly basis. We'll get together on Sundays typically and go over the calendar for the week so we know what's happening and not happening so we can anticipate. And I've also found that last thing I want to do on Sunday night is have a calendar meeting right before we're about to begin a brand. So I've learned, like, let's do that on Saturday or Sunday morning so it's not feeling like something's hanging over me. For you, from a communication perspective, I look at being a CEO, and I've had the pleasure of working with so many amazing CEOs. It's kind of like being a head football coach or a big basketball coach in a big program, right? It seems like the spouses who marry these men and women know that this is what I signed up for. Now, they didn't sign up to be disrespected or these different things here and there, but they know that this man or this woman is going to have a lot of responsibilities. So what does communication look around that? Like, so for me, for example, I have busy seasons of speaking, and my wife knows that I'm going to be on the go. There's not a lot of flexibility with schedules. I'll be across the country. But we also know there are pockets over the course of a year in the summer and also during the holiday season, November and December, when I'm not on the road as much. And she knows that I'm going to be present, and we're going to have things on the calendar for us, this and that. And I have to be clear about that communication. But I'm curious for you with all of that, how do you get to a point when you're on vacation in the Caribbean on a beach or next to a pool with a Mai Tai or something, or a nice sparkling water, but your phone's out because you're responding to emails at work. And sometimes, a lot of spouses can get frustrated when they see their significant other on the phone, on vacation, or at dinner. How do you make sure that frustration doesn't happen?
Yeah, I think I'm fortunate enough to be married to a spouse who had a career in credit unions before she started doing some consulting for credit unions, and so I think she understands that. And I've talked with her at length. We talk about honesty and transparency. I think we're going to have another podcast episode where we really dive into that. But I'm transparent with her. She knew when I met her that my goal was to become a CEO of a credit union. She had seen what it was like. She worked at Navy Federal Credit Union, largest credit union in the world, and was working with Cutler Dawson, who was the CEO at the time, in the office with him, doing compliance work, writing press releases, all kinds of things. And I think she saw at that time, he was an admiral first in the Navy before he was a CEO at Navy Federal. And so I think she saw that was the life. And she knew when she met me. And as I was progressing through my career, I was chief marketing officer at the time, that she met me, and knew that I was on a senior team, and that at any given moment, as a marketing officer, even of a smaller $300 million credit union, there could be some weather thing, something happened where the communication needed to go out to the membership and the team about whatever. So she knew that early on, and she had seen that. So I'm fortunate that way. But yes, it has driven her nuts sometimes, where it's like we're having lunch and everybody's just eating, nobody's talking or whatever. And I'm whipping out my phone and checking email and going through the email for the day. And put your phone away. I've heard that a number of times. We even have at dinner, we talk about like Chick-fil-A Wednesday in the previous episode, and the different things, but something always seems to revolve around food. But dinner time, we have a no phones at the dinner table. And so I'll take my phone and I'll turn it upside down and I'll put it next to me on the table. And of course the thing's going to buzz, you're going to get, I'm just like, oh, eating whatever. And then, as soon as dinner's over, it's like I grab it and then follow up. But that's a time for a family to really talk and communicate and have those conversations. How was your day? What's going on? Even if watching the news or Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune, whatever's on TV at the time, during dinner, just to be at one with the spouse. And I think she gets it too, because she's a volunteer with the school board in our town. She calls bingo for the senior center in our town, and is devoted to volunteer aspects of life. And I do a lot of volunteer work as well. Beyond just being a CEO, I volunteer in a number of different organizations where I'm on boards of directors. And that takes me out during the evening time at times as well, where I not only miss out on family things, but I miss out on my workout, my bike rides too. And so I have to balance all of that. And it's a juggling act, but it is the lifestyle of a CEO. And it's the lifestyle that we both chose to be involved in. I think when you get engaged to someone and you ask them to marry, they really need to know what they're getting signed up for, right? And I think it's cool that she said yes and we got married and everything's cool that way. But it can be a challenge. It does take balance. It does take work.
Things work, and things really the communication. And as I hear you talk, I think about that being present and how critical that is. When we are together, let's be present. One thing that me and buddies do, but also I do my darndest when I come home when I'm with my family and my kids. I'm not on call in a way that you are, in the work that I do as a speaker and coach. But I like to put my phone in airplane mode. I have that luxury based on the work that I do. So even when I do dinner with friends, sometimes we'll pull our phones out together and we put them on airplane mode so we can be fully present during that time. And I want to do the same for when I'm at home as well. My kids are 9 years old, these twins, and I want to be as present for them as possible. And again, they see daddy on the road so much, on so much FaceTime, and I want to make sure I don't have a phone between me and them when we're here. And when I do have to take calls or whatever, I try to go to another room or separate church and state if you can. Something that I just took away from what you said. So, hey, listen, for all the credit union professionals out there, it sounds like Jason's advocating for you to likewise marry a credit union professional so they get a clear understanding. You also alluded to something, I think, and this is different, I think, for a lot of people. And I've done so much coaching that I can say this with confidence. One thing my wife doesn't hear me do too much is complain. Yes, I'll be frustrated with this or that, but I feel so fortunate, Jace, that I'm doing work that I love, that I care about. And equally for you, yeah, you may be picking up your phone in the middle of the night if there's an emergency, you're on vacation and you have to step away to take a phone call or respond to an email. But we have frustrating times, but we're not complaining. Now, I know a lot of men and women who do not like their job. When Sunday comes around, they get a stomach ache because they're not looking forward to going to the office. So when I do find myself complaining about the path that I'm on or my work, my wife always reminds me, never forget you chose this. And that's a really good reminder for me that I chose this. So I guess the point I'm making here is that maybe we're fortunate, and hopefully the folks listening to this as well can hit pause and remind themselves that they're fortunate to do the work that they love as well. It's not a chore for you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's totally a passion for me. I'm excited to go to work, whether I'm working from home or I'm in the office. I'm excited every day. And I try to, well, the organization itself tries to hire like-minded people. And I think we're at that point now where we are seeing people have that same passion. I've heard it a number of times here at the organization that, we are really working as a team, as a unit to better members' lives. In fact, not to bring up just our vision statement here, but it's really outstanding that my board of directors and I and our consultant that we used created this new vision statement for us, and it's to empower members to achieve financial freedom and build thriving communities. And we were like, wow, what a great vision statement of where we want to be and what the organization stands for. And, I know there's other organizations out there, whether they're credit unions, whether they're for-profit businesses, they have their mantras. But when we looked at this, financial freedom is something different for everyone, whether you're wanting to pay off a student loan, whether you're wanting to buy a new truck, whether you're saving to go on vacation, whatever, your first house, paying off your house, if you're retired, getting the most out of your investment income. It's different for everyone. And it's very private, very personal. And so for us to say as an organization that we are trying to empower our members to achieve whatever their financial freedom might be. And then as a community-based organization, community-based credit union, we want to build thriving communities. And I think that passion, I get goosebumps just saying those words, which I may be a wacko compared to a lot of the employees here. They may not think the same way, but I want to instill that in them, that what we do and our mission and what we're doing in the community to be a partner with some of these other 501c3 businesses that are struggling for donations in a time where money's tight. What more can we give? What more can we do? To be involved in the community. And that passion just has to bleed through. And, that's why I volunteer in a number of organizations to lend my expertise, to talk about these kind of things, what it means to be a leader of an organization. And, I talk to many people that are involved in their organizations and work 80 hours a week. And I don't work 80 hours a week. And it all drives back to that passion and having balance and being able to enjoy what you do. And, that old adage, I don't know who said it, but, it's not work if you have fun doing it, if you enjoy going, every day. And I think we work as an organization here that if we find someone that's not enjoying their work environment or what they're doing, we help to move them on to something that they enjoy at work, or, they may not be right for our organization, because we want to empower and employ people that are passionate about helping others. And, that social mission goes back to, you hear all the time, like, oh, the younger generation, they want to have a social mission. Well, we've got that here. There's a opportunity for a career at a credit union or any other business that has a social mission to help others. And it's always been, I think, the theme of what we're talking about on this podcast is real natural leadership and taking care of people. That's what it's all about. So it's the passion of it all.
Yeah, say that statement one more time. That mission, that vision statement.
The vision, we empower members to achieve financial freedom and build thriving communities. Now, we're in 6 counties in Southern Maine, lots of little communities there that have a lot of people, not a lot of people. Um, so, what does thriving communities mean? I think, we want to continue to see Maine grow and have businesses that, take off and do well. And that's what we want to do is build these communities. And we partner with a lot of organizations that are involved in the community. And I think it's a fantastic thing to be a part of.
Yeah, a couple of things come up. One, this is the first time as you were reading that. First, I love it. I was like, I wonder why I feel like my family, we need to have our own statement, our own
Yeah.
vision statement that we try to apply and go for every single day. So I'm gonna sit with that. Say, hey, so many organizations, my business, I know which direction I'm going there, but that North Star for my family, though I think wife and I are on similar terms. But writing something down as a family, I think, could be a really, really powerful exercise. So that's something I'm going to try to see what that looks like. I also just want to rewind for a second because I want to make sure you heard Jason correctly. He didn't say I don't work 8 hours a week. He said I don't work 80 hours a week. Just I want to
Yeah.
make sure you guys, he does work more than 8 hours a week. That'd be funny if you didn't though. Um, let's talk about communication for a second. We talked about calendars earlier and how we share things and sometimes it enrolls. And listen, when I'm on day 6, day 7 of a road trip and my wife's had to do everything at home solo with our kids, I know it's tough. And, and stereotypically, I can hear so many people saying, yeah, but I'm paying the bills and all that kind of old school,
Right.
those old school kind of thoughts that just makes no sense. I think communication is so critical. And so, to your point, something we do beyond the calendars and me being available as much as possible. Yeah, we do that nightly FaceTime to see the family and all of that. Something else we do, Jason, that I think this may surprise a lot of people. We used to text each other in the morning or have the morning FaceTime and that as well. And I found that sometimes that me feeling that pressure sometimes to connect with them before they got to school, especially if I'm on a different time zone or something, it started feeling like it didn't feel good. And I had to communicate that to my wife, like, hey, I'm going to communicate with you guys as much as possible. And sometimes if I'm on the other side of the world or on the East Coast or different things, I'm not always going to be able to make that first, phone call or FaceTime in the morning, but I always will make it in the evening as long as I'm available. And at first, I think there was some hesitancy when I said that because we had this check-in in the morning and check-in in the evening, and it just started feeling like an obligation. And for me, anytime I feel obligated to do something versus wanting to do something, that's a red light flashing for me. But as we communicated with it, she totally understood it and it opened things up. And yeah, we'll talk in the morning sometimes, but not all the time. But she knows with my schedule, and I'm sure this is the same with you, that we're not going to necessarily be text messaging to each other all day long or phone calls all day long. There are some times when Tony, I'm going to be radio silent because I'm doing what I got to do, because I'm preparing, because I'm on client calls, etc. And I just had to make sure early on to communicate that clearly so I wouldn't feel guilty for doing what I'm supposed to do on the road. I'm not sure if that makes any sense. Can you relate to that at all?
Yeah, it totally does. I mean, when you look at my calendar, any given day, it could be filled with multiple meetings, and, let's say we have somebody coming over to the house to do some work and she needs to get in touch with me, shoot me a text and I see my phone light up while I'm in that meeting. I might be leading that meeting. And it's like, you have that urge to jump on that and get back right away because it's your wife and, she's got a contractor coming over and they've got an important question. And God forbid, she doesn't want to screw up something at home that, I might have the answer to with a contractor or whatever it might be. And so, yeah, that is a challenge. And I think that she knows if I don't respond right away, she's not going to continue to hit me with texts or a call or whatever. And we even have somewhat of a code like, hey, call me when you can. And I originally, when that started happening when we were young, when I was younger and earlier in our marriage, that would hit and I'd be like, oh my God, what's up? Um, and so I said, if you just want to call and hang the wash and have a conversation about something. You That's great, but tell me like it's not urgent. Then I know, okay, well, this can relax, you know? So again, to your point, like you have that communication with your spouse to sit down and say, hey, this is how I like to be communicated to. I'm going to be busy throughout the day. A lot of times in the morning when I give her a kiss and I leave to go to work, I'll say, hey, I've got a really busy day today. So if you don't hear from me, this is why. I'm recording a podcast with Antonio today. Like, it's going to be some time out of the day that I cannot answer the phone. Those kind of things. And so again, it's that communication that you're talking about, that, having that open, honest communication to say, hey, I'm going to be busy today. Um, I don't love you any less than I did 2 hours ago, but this day is a day that I'm swamped.
What's amazing though is how sometimes people are afraid to even have a simple conversation like that about
Yeah.
that. In my experience, most if you want to call a subject like that a tough conversation, which I don't think it is, it's something we avoid because we feel uncomfortable for some reason. I found that most tough conversations last 10 minutes or less. But if we're willing to share where we're coming from, why we are showing up like this, or why we are not available, I find that people get that. But also, I think to your point, I get across to my wife that if decisions need to be made, that you'd like me to be part of. If they're not urgent, we can wait. But also, I just instill in her that I trust you to make the right decision. If it's absolutely urgent, we can wait. But I want to have those conversations, and even if they are a little bit uncomfortable or uneasy, I'd rather do it than not do it and make different assumptions of different things that are or are not happening. I want to shift gears with this question, and we'll have a few more questions to get into. And this is an interesting one. Obviously you've had a fantastic career. We think about your trajectory from where you began to where you are today. This may make you think for a second, but when you look back to early or in your career, when there were younger kids in the household, are there any things that you can look back today and say, you know what? I did that wrong. And I'm thinking about that young executive, that young leader that may have a young family at home that's figuring out exactly what we're talking about right now, because maybe what they feel, Jason, is guilt. Guilt for being away, guilt for the demand of their work, guilt that, yes, their husband or wife wants to cuddle up and watch a movie tonight, but they need to go plug in for an hour and finish some work or finish some emails. So that the guilt's real. But if it's something that you say you did wrong or something you wish you had to unlearn, does anything come up for you?
Yeah, I think a lot of it when I had young kids, it was my wife at the time with my children was a stay-at-home mom. So she had all day with the kids, all of that. And my responsibilities at that particular credit union, I was chief political officer and I had events at night and that kind of thing. And there were nights when I would get home at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night after an event, after I had been gone from 7 in the morning till 9:30 at night. Super tired, all of that, and I could barely, like, give the kids a kiss goodnight, but she had them all day and would hand them off to me, and I didn't have time to get out of my suit and tie before I was, like, taking on slobbery kids, right? And so I think looking back at that, um, I might have needed more grace at that time. Things that I've learned more, that I've matured and become a leader, um, a leader of a 130 person organization, even. I still am learning all the time on how to do things better. But I think that's true with younger kids. And if you have a household where you have both parents working and you've got a babysitter, those kids have not been under your charge all day. And, you get home and, they're wound up, they're happy to see you. And there's some times where you just want to kick off your shoes and, watch nightly TV and have dinner or whatever. And so that part of it, yeah, if I could do some things differently there, I probably would have. So yeah, it's learning experiences all the way around. And I think, again, yeah, for me, I think it was probably the grace to be like, hey, you guys, I'm home. Hey, even at 9:30 at night or 10 o'clock at night after working all day long. And now that's one of those things.
Yeah, we learn as we go. I think of two things that I definitely would do different. I still have young kids at home, but this one will make you chuckle a little bit, I bet. Being a homeowner is with busy schedules, being on the road. You know what I know I don't want to do? When I've been traveling nonstop and I'm tired, I don't want to work on home projects in my weekends with or in the evenings with little ones. I'd rather spend time with the family or do something else. So I've learned that as much as I can go on YouTube and figure out how to fix X, Y, and Z and go to Menards or the Home Depot or the local hardware store, that sometimes it's better just to hire someone instead of having open-ended projects at home that my wife could be asking about that I told her we don't need to hire anyone. We don't need to spend any money. I'll get that done. And my track record shows that you will not get that done because we've been talking about this for months. So one, I think, and I'm getting better at this these days. I haven't had to worry about it too much with my life in the past 6 months. That's another story. But I would just write some checks that I didn't want to write. And anytime I think I can write a check to make my family's life easier, while not being irresponsible, I think it's the right move if it's not going to hurt ourselves. Uh, Second, what comes up briefly is, you know, from an outside perspective, I live an interesting life. I mean, you look at me on the road and you see me on stages interacting. I get to do pretty cool work and it's fun and I enjoy it. And so, my wife shows a lot of interest in my work. Thank goodness she supports me. She knows that I love this work, that lights me up. And thank goodness I found my zone of genius. What I didn't do early on, Jason, is and I'm glad I'm talking about this right now because I'm going to do it when she comes home today. I didn't show enough interest in her and what she had going on in her life, work wise, friends wise, project wise, how she's feeling. I outsourced that to other things as if what I was doing was the only thing that mattered, which wasn't the case. So I think showing more interest in what these folks are up to is important. And when I think I have to remind myself that these don't need to be drawn out 45-minute, hour-long conversations. Man, being fully present with someone for a locked in 10 minutes is powerful, especially in this day and age when, people aren't locked in. I've learned the most valuable thing you can give someone is your attention. Am I right?
Yeah, definitely. It's funny when you say that about the projects and everything, because I hear my wife Shannon in my head right now telling me about how we have to clean out the basement that we've lived there 8 years and I haven't done it yet. Every male, I'm sure of this, has a box of like old USB cables and DVDs and CDs and stuff like that. And ours happens to be in the basement. Now, she has a lot of Christmas decorations. I will give her that, we probably need to clean out and go through as well. And I know she'll be listening to this. So, I'll probably end up regretting this, but, it's that box of stuff that she's like, we need to get rid of that. We need to call the junk guys that have them come out. And so writing a check for that is one thing, but like going through all that old stuff just to like throw out, I might need that USB cable from 1989 or whatever, the first
Yeah.
one.
And odds are we definitely are not going to need it. But guess what? We throw it away. And the day that we do need it, it's gone. But look, man, we've talked about a variety of things here today. I think next time I want to talk about this conversation again, but I want to get some guests on to communicate with us about this because obviously we gave our perspective as husbands and fathers. I would love to hear the perspective, as we talk about these things from some mothers and senior leaders on that side as well. So I think that'd be fun for us to do. And for folks who are listening here, if you have any thoughts, you know how to reach Jason and I. We're easy to find on the interwebs. Let us know what you think. But we just want to say thank you so much for listening to another episode of Pilot to Co-Pilot with me, Antonio Neves, and Jason Lindstrom. And we look forward to seeing you all for another episode very soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Antonio. Thanks, everybody.